So let's have a chat with Mal Fletcher, social commentator. Morning, Mal.
Morning, Scott.
Now, what do you make of all this? I mean, is this right? You advise, governments on the impact on being so reliant on smartphones.
Yeah, it is. I was just in Africa talking to political leaders there. Smartphones are very popular, obviously very useful. By 2025, in fact, something like 60 to 70% of the adult population of the planet will own a smartphone. That's remarkable. But there are some questions about the impact of our digital engagement on the way we think. There's a number of studies now coming out talking about a phenomenon called shallow think. Because we multi-screen so much, we're starting to think broad and shallow, but not narrow and deep. So we know a little bit about a lot, but not a lot about a little. We don't specialise in the way we once did.
So we kind of know the headlines of things, but we don't know the actual full story of something.
Yeah, often that's true, especially with social media today. And there's evidence, too, of what we call transactional relationships with machines. We tend not to remember what we learn on the internet as much anymore. We remember where we found it, and we rely on the machine to store the information on platforms like Pocket or Evernote, for example. And because we don't store that information in our own long-term memories, it's often less helpful in bringing about new ideas and producing innovation. So, look, it's not a question of trying to turn our clocks back to a pre-digital age,
but
being aware of the challenges and making sure that the gadgets are our servants and not our masters.
Well, I was going to say that was going to be my next question. What do we do to kind of combat that and or embrace it and work alongside it rather than trying to turn the clock back, as you say?
I think it is a question of digital discipline, really, of making sure perhaps there are certain times in the day when we're less involved, less engaged with machines, making sure that we have time to meet with people, and when we're with people physically, we're with them mentally. This is another problem. Psychologists talk about absent presence, where you've got maybe 10 people around a board table at work and only 6 of them are really mentally there. The others are in cyberspace somewhere under the table. And one study in Britain suggested that about 85% of people who tweet while they're in a meeting are talking to people in the same room with them. So
but you find this an awful lot, particularly on social media. You'll find, whether you're on Twitter, whether you're on Facebook, and there are people sat, as you say, whether it's families, sat in the same room, and they're talking on social media, but they're all talking. They're sat opposite, but they're all talking on social media. What's all that about?
Yeah, it's a strange phenomenon, isn't it? And one of the other, and I think this one's a little more concerning to me online today. In the last 5 years or so, we've seen the development of what I call intellectual fascism, where in social media, you've got people, in a sense, denying to others a right they demand for themselves, the right of freedom of belief and expression.
Yes.
And I think it's very good to have opinions. I think it's very positive to be passionate about our opinions. But when my opinion's the only one I'll tolerate, when opinion becomes obsession, then I think we have a problem. We have anti-social media then.
I think you're absolutely right there, because of course, you get an awful lot, don't you, of the keyboard warriors that will turn around and say you are wrong, and you're thinking, hang on a minute, it is an opinion. Just because what I say, we're not saying that I'm particularly right, but it is that respect. And are we losing that vision? Are we losing, like you say, we're going narrow rather than width and depth? Is that a danger of how behaviour will become as we go along?
Yeah, if we're not careful. I mean, technology is amoral, isn't it? It's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. It's how we choose to use it. So it's human choice that makes the difference. I think the issue you've just mentioned feeds into a thing called social disinhibition. People lose their inhibitions when they're online because they think they're covered by anonymity. There was an interesting study in 2015 that suggested 2% of 2,000 Brits who were surveyed admitted that they had insulted someone they didn't know online in that year. Now, 2% of 2,000 doesn't sound a lot, but if you extrapolate that over the whole of Britain, that means something like 2 million people insulting 2 million other people they don't know. So we need to be careful, too, that we don't lose our inhibitions completely online, thinking, well, I'm anonymous and I can say what I like. I don't think that's such a positive thing.
Mal, really appreciate you coming on and joining us this morning. It's a fantastic insight to kind of talk to you, and particularly hearing all the stats as well. And there's part of me that is worried.
Yeah, well, I don't think worries a great thing. Anxiety is not a good response, but I do think that we need to be careful. I think we need to be aware and honest about the challenges as well as the opportunities.
Mal, thanks very much indeed for joining us. That's Mal Fletcher, social commentator who advises governments on the impact of being so reliant on smartphones.